I still remember the way the water sounded that morning. Not loud, not angry, just steady, like it knew something was ending. The sun hadn't even climbed over the horizon yet, but the sky over the bay was already that pale orange we get on the coast in late autumn. Cold enough to make you tuck your hands into your sleeves, but calm enough to know it was going to be a good day for fishing. We launched anyway, even though we both knew it wasn't really about the fish that day. It was about him. About his last day out there. My name's Aaron. I grew up on the coast, and for most of my life the sea was the closest thing I had to a church. I fished with my dad, then on my own, then with a few mates, and somewhere in the middle of all that I met old Bill. He wasn't actually that old when I met him, just older than me, with the kind of sun-beaten face you only get from 40 years of salt and wind. The sort of bloke who didn't talk much, but when he did, you listened. He had this quiet way of doing things. No rush, no panic, just tide in, tide out. I learned more watching him handle a line than I did in any class. But time catches everyone, even those the sea loves. A few months before that morning, he told me the doctor said his lungs were tired. That's how he put it. Not broken, not sick, just tired. Guess they've had enough of the salt, he joked, but his eyes said he knew it was more than that. The doctor told him to slow down. His daughter told him to stop. The sea didn't say anything, which I think hurt him the most. Because the sea doesn't beg you to stay. It just waits. So when he called me the night before and said, "One more run, mate. Just you and me," I didn't even hesitate. I knew what he meant. Not a big haul. Not a job. A goodbye. We met at the jetty before light. The town was still asleep. Just the gulls and two idiots who couldn't let go of the water. He walked slower than before, but he still refused help carrying the gear. "Still got two hands," he said. His boat was old, older than me probably, paint worn off in places, name half faded, Matilda Rose. Named after his wife, who'd passed a few years earlier. He always touched the name before untying the ropes. That morning he held his hand there a little longer. We pushed off, the motor coughed to life, and we drifted out of the marina into open water. The sea was glass, just small ripples, the kind of morning every fisherman secretly hopes for. You could smell salt, diesel, and that damp rope smell that never really leaves a boat. He breathed it in deep, like he was trying to bottle it. "You hear that?" he said. I listened. "What?" "Nothing. That's the good part," he grinned. "We didn't talk much at first. We didn't need to. Some friendships are built on words. Ours was built on early mornings and shared silence. We set the lines the way we always did, him checking the hooks, me running the line out, except this time he was slower. His hand shook a bit. I pretended not to see. He pretended not to notice me pretending. That's how men from here say they love each other. When the lines were in, we just Saturday. The sun finally lifted over the horizon, turning the water copper. A pod of dolphins showed up. They always turn up when you don't have a camera, and he nodded toward them. Been following me for years, those fellas. Probably wondering why I don't come out as much. "You can tell them yourself," I said. "They listen better than people." He chuckled, then coughed, then waved it off. "You know," he said after a while, "I didn't want to tell my daughter I was coming out." "Why not?" "She thinks stopping is as easy as deciding. She doesn't get that this," he waved a hand over the water, "this is what I've been talking to longer than I've talked to anyone. You can't just stop talking to the sea." There was a pause. The kind that says more than a paragraph. If you're watching this, yeah, I'm talking to you now, the one listening to this story, and you've got an old man in your life who still does something that looks pointless to you. Fishing, fixing things, sitting in a shed carving wood, don't rush him. That's not just a hobby. That's how he remembers who he is. And if stories like this matter to you, stick around and subscribe. We tell them here so they don't get lost. We waited for the lines to tense. It took a bit. Autumn waters can be lazy, but then there it was. A tug. Then another. He looked at me like a kid. "You wanna take it?" I asked. "Nah," he said, eyes bright. "This one's mine." He stood, slowly, braced himself and pulled. Not a big fish. Not a monster tail. Just a good, respectable catch. The kind that puts dinner on the table and a smile on your face. He brought it in, hands a bit clumsy, but steady enough. When it was finally on deck, flapping, shining in the morning light, He just watched it. "That'll do," he said quietly. "That's a good last one." It hit me then. This was it. This was the moment he'd remember. Not the storms he beat. Not the big haul of '09. Not the time he outfished every young bloke on the pier. This ordinary, small, peaceful catch was the one he wanted to end on. Not with glory. With gratitude. We kept fishing a bit longer, but you could tell his heart had already said goodbye. He sat on the side of the boat, looking back toward the shoreline. You could just see the town from there, the little houses, the jetty, the pelicans sitting like grumpy old men. "You know," he said, "when I was your age, I thought I was just catching fish. Took me years to realize I was catching mornings. Sunrises. Time. You don't get these back." He picked up the fish, looked at it, then at the water. I thought he was going to toss it in the bucket, but instead he did something I didn't expect. He let it go. Just lowered it back into the sea like it was something sacred. The fish flicked its tail, disappeared. I looked at him. "Thought it was your last one," I said. "It was," he smiled. "Doesn't mean I have to keep it." That's when I felt that pull in the chest you get when you realize someone is teaching you something without saying it straight. Letting go isn't losing. Sometimes it's honoring. He didn't need proof he was a fisherman. The sea already knew. We started heading back. The sun was higher now, boats were starting to come out, the town waking up. On the way in, he got quiet again. Not sad, just thoughtful. Like he was taking inventory of a life. "I'm not scared of stopping," he said eventually. "I'm scared of being forgotten." "You won't be," I said. "Not while I'm around." "Well," he nodded, "then you tell him. Tell him what it's like. Tell him why we came out here. Tell him we weren't just chasing fish." So that's what I'm doing now. Keeping my promise. If you've ever had someone like that in your life, someone who taught you something just by showing up every day, share this story with someone. Stories only stay alive if we pass them on. And if you want more stories about real people, real work, and the traditions that built places like ours, hit that subscribe button. That way the algorithm doesn't bury the quiet stories under all the loud ones. We pulled back into the marina. He tied the boat slower than usual. Touched the name Matilda rose again. "You gonna sell her?" I asked. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe I'll just let her sit. Boats are like old dogs. They don't like new owners." I helped him off. He was breathing heavier now, but he still refused an arm. Stubborn to the end. At the top of the jetty he stopped and turned around. Looked out at the water like he was memorizing it. "She was good to me," he said. "You were good to her," I answered. He nodded. "Then we are square." That was the last time we went out together. After that, his daughter really did make him stop. His health dipped, and the boat didn't leave the berth for months. Sometimes I'd walk past and run my hand along the side, just to keep her company. Sometimes I'd pop in on him and he'd ask, "How's the water?" like it was an old mate. When he passed, the funeral was small. Fishermen don't make a fuss. But that morning on the water, that was his real farewell. No speeches, no suits, just him, the sea, and a fish he chose to release. I still go out. Not as much, but I go. And some mornings, when it's calm like that day, I do the same thing. I bring one in, look at it, thank the sea, and let it go. Not because I'm sentimental, okay, maybe a little, but because I remember him saying, we weren't just catching fish. And I don't want to forget what else we were catching. If this story made you think of someone, a dad, a granddad, an old neighbor who fixed boats in his yard, tell them thanks while you still can. And if they're not here anymore, tell the story anyway. That's how they stay. And if you like this kind of storytelling, about work, about people, about the kind of life you can smell the salt in, subscribe. There's more coming. Next time I'll tell you about the trucker who drove home even when home wasn't there anymore. You won't want to miss that.